love, the love that I felt for Skippy, it was just like that, but like on steroids or something. Um, and there was this, what I can only call a download, where it was like billions of questions were answered in just a moment. Just
Raymond, you talked recently at South Bay Ions about your near death experience. Could you talk to my audience about it now?
I'd love to. I'd love to. First of all, I kind of think the term near-death experience is probably not that accurate. I prefer after-death experience because there was nothing near about it. I mean, I was gone, and came back. So and my entire this happened when I was 9 years old, 1966, and back then, this was a taboo subject. It was not part of our popular culture, and I learned very early on not to talk about it because people will look at you sideways. But my entire adult life, I've had this yearning that somehow, somewhere, somebody could benefit from my experience, and yet I found out that I couldn't talk about it. And only now, only recently, that's been changing, and so I consider it a real privilege to be able to travel. I travel all over the country, actually all over the world, and talk about it, and just tell people what happened. And I think of myself more as a reporter. I'm no guru. I'm not. I don't have any special knowledge. I'm just a regular dude that, like you, I go to Tupperware parties and all that, but something clearly out of the norm happened to me, and it was absolutely profound. And I think about it now. I was 9 years old, and I think about 9 years old. I can barely remember anything about being 9 years old. I remember I remember what I got for Christmas that year. I got a Johnny Eagle toy rifle, and I remember girls were starting to look more interesting. I
At
remember
9 years
that.
old?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, fourth grade, sure. Starting to look more interesting, and but I don't remember a lot of detail of 9 years old. But I remember my after death experience in great detail.
Yeah. Tell us about it.
Yeah. Most people want to know what happened. I won't spend a lot of time on that. It was a martial arts accident. I got clobbered in the head really hard, and it caused me to go into convulsions, and my tongue buckled back into my airway, and I couldn't breathe. So I died. And I was not conscious for that part of it. I lost consciousness and went face down on the concrete. So I took two hard blows to the head, and so I lost consciousness. Now I say I lost consciousness, but there was no break in my awareness. It wasn't like going to sleep and waking up. It was I was here and then I was not, and and as I tell my story, it's gonna sound like a progressive series of events, and it's gonna sound like I'm talking about like places and things. But when we leave our bodies, there's no space. There's no up, down, sideways, back and forth. None of that exists anymore, and there's no time either. There's no past or future. And I have a couple of phrases. I've had a long time to think about how to explain what it felt like, and what it what it feels like to be in a position of no time, no past or future is it's a perpetual unfolding of now. And I think most people have had that experience in small ways. We've all experienced that. Maybe in dance or a brilliant musical performance, or even probably a good example would be like a really intense orgasm where you lose all sense of who you are, where you are, you're in the present moment only. So it was like that, but on steroids, and it was beautiful. A perpetual unfolding of now, and here's how it felt. It felt like I was still Raymond, but it was like somebody added ing to the end of my name. I was no longer Raymond the noun, the person, place, or thing. I had become Raymond the verb. I was Raymonding. So that's what it felt like. And to be in a perpetual state of perpetual unfolding of now is an absolutely liberating feeling. Powerful feeling. And I'll describe what it feels like to not have a body, because I didn't have a body either. I was a floating sphere of awareness. That's the best I can do to describe it. But, time and space are built right into our language. And so when I describe this stuff, it's going to sound like I'm talking about a progressive series of events. And it's going to sound like I'm talking about stuff, but I'm not. It's just the limitations of our language. So when I left my body, I didn't know where I was, what was happening. I didn't remember the accident. I was in the just present moment now. There was no place or stuff. I was in what I can only call a void, and there was no color, there was no light, there was no dark, there was no gravity, no sensations. It was nothing, and it was I was really disoriented. I didn't know what was happening, and I still could reason. I still had the powers of, I was trying to figure out what was going on, and it frightened me. I became more and more disoriented and more scared, because there was nothing I could grab onto to know who I am, where I am, what was happening. There was just, excuse me, nothing there. And the fear started ramping up and amplifying, and I got more and more scared. And it started getting out of control. I really kind of lost it, and I remember having this distinct thought. I remember I could still reason and think. It wasn't in words, though. I don't know how to describe that, but I remember thinking, I've lost my mind. I'm going crazy. I'm going crazy. That's the explanation for what's happening. And somehow that brought me a little bit of peace. And then my next thought was, well, if I'm going crazy, there's nothing I can do about it. And I let go. I released. And when I released, all that confusion stopped, just stopped. And then the pleasurable sensations began, and it was replaced. It started simple, like contentment and peace, and then that started ramping up and compounding and getting more and more intense. And I'm a perpetual unfolding of now, and I'm a floating sphere of awareness, and it ramped up and up and up until I was in pure, utter bliss. Absolutely beautiful experience. And maybe some of the viewers have heard stories of a tunnel, traveling through a tunnel. That didn't happen to me. Maybe some of the viewers have heard of like floating above your body and seeing the body, and that didn't happen to me. But I did become aware of a point of white light, intense, brilliant, gajillion times brighter than the sun. A little point of white light, and it was absolutely beautiful. It was alive. It was like breathing, and somehow I knew I had to go there. I don't know how I knew that, but I knew I had to go there. And remember, I didn't know that I had died. I didn't remember the accident, and I still was trying to figure out what was happening. But I knew I had to go toward the light, and as I approached the light, it got bigger and more intense and more beautiful and more loving, and it sucked me in and absorbed me. And I became the light, and the light became me. I was the white light. And a lot of experiencers talk about love, about this being a place of love. And I've tried to think of adjectives to describe the intensity of this love, unconditional, pure, powerful. The only one that I can think of that works is infinite. It was infinite. It helps me to close my eyes sometimes, so forgive me, but I can go right there. It was infinite love. If you can imagine your baby that you loved, imagine like the most intense feeling of love you've ever had, or your mother or your dog, whatever it is. Imagine that, infinite, no end. So powerful and so absorbing. Wave after wave after wave of cleansing white love washing over me. And I was the light. It was so beautiful. It was so beautiful. And there's a lot of detail that I'm going to have to leave out because it would just take too long. But I'll give you some highlights. All of us have lost loved ones. Most of us have lost pets. I was 9 years old, and my dog, Skippy, was there. My dog was there. And again, remember, I didn't know I was dead. And now he didn't have fur and legs and stuff, but it was Skippy. He was also a floating sphere of awareness. And he absorbed him. We absorbed each other, and we were communicating. There was communication going on, but it was perfect communication. It was like telepathic, and in human communication, there's this thing that happens all the time. I know you know about this, like where you'll say something, and I will hear something completely different based on my filters, right? So human communication's flawed, but that communication there was perfect. And Skippy and I were talking to each other. It was, I love you. Oh, Skippy, I love you. Where are we? What happened? How did we get? It was kind of going on and on like that. And so here's the headline: your loved ones, your pets, they're there. They're still there, and you'll see them again. Next highlight. I'm a professional artist and musician, and I'm working on a book now, a series of paintings. So it's going to be a written account, but it's also going to be a series of 21 paintings, so that you can get a visual feel of what was going on. And you'll see some of these on this video later. I'll make sure that you get a copy of some of these paintings. And I found myself standing in front of these golden columns. And now remember, there's no stuff there. so it wasn't like, it was, the best I could do is say maybe it was made out of light or something. These columns, it was like Jack and the Beanstalk, just rising up, and they were stacked in such a way that it felt like it was an entrance to something. But I didn't go down there, and I didn't enter it, so I don't know what it was. I couldn't tell you what it was. Next headline. I was greeted by a being of some sort, a spirit of some sort, a floating sphere of awareness. He knew me. By the way, it was a masculine presence, and he knew me. I couldn't tell you what this thing was. It could have been an angel, or it didn't look like anything. It didn't have a body, but it was an intelligent being like me. And he knew me, and he called me by name. He said, "Raymond, come here. I want to show you some things." Right? And then, so he absorbed me, and I absorbed him. We became one, and we fell in love. The love that I felt for Skippy, it was just like that, but like on steroids or something. And there was this, what I can only call a download, where it was like billions of questions were answered in just a moment. Just all of creation opened up and shimmered, and I understood. And the odd thing about it was that it wasn't like I'd learned it. It wasn't like he taught me that I already knew it. It was more like remembering, more like that. I already knew all the answers to all these billions of questions. It was just a matter of going, oh yeah, sure, right. And I understand how everything, how the universe, how the multiverse works. Everything made perfect sense. And next headline was, he then showed me how absolutely critical my purpose was in creation. Creation, by the way, I'm talking about me, but really I'm talking about you, the viewer, because this is about you. There is no way that the universe, that creation could possibly unfold without you fulfilling your purpose. And I know a lot of people struggle with that. What's my purpose? Why am I here? Sometimes it seems kind of pointless. Like, I go to my stupid job and I got my stupid boss, and I go home and I watch TV, and there's got to be something more, right? And I've heard lots of answers to that about purpose. I've heard minister after guru, after priest, after pastor, after teacher make the claim that our purpose here is to learn and grow and learn lessons and move to the next level. And then so that each time we do this, if there's such thing as reincarnation, I can't answer that. I can't answer that question. But to progress to the next level of spiritual awareness until we achieve spiritual perfection or something. But I was told what my purpose was and what your purpose is, and it had nothing to do with learning or growing or moving to the next level. It kind of, on the surface, it sounds like it makes sense, right? Because obviously, as human beings, we grow, we mature, we learn lessons, and we, hopefully, and we get wiser as we get older. But So that kind of fits that idea, but I was told very clearly what our purpose is, and your purpose is to love. It's that simple. Hard to pull off cleanly, but you are here to love. And I'm not just talking about the warm fuzzies. Most people, when you say the word love, they think warm fuzzies. Love is a far more multi-dimensional, complex thing than just the warm fuzzies. There, it's very obvious. Everything is made out of love. Made out of it. Like, this is love. This is an expression of God's love. And if you don't like the word God, use whatever word you want. But, there's the big questions in life that we all have. I can tell you one thing. One of the big questions, I think is probably one of the oldest questions, is, okay, if God is a good, loving God, then how is it possible that he could allow the evil and the horror that obviously exists? How is that possible if he really does, if God is pure love? And so I think that religions had to invent an anti-God to explain that. Oh, that's not God, that's the devil doing that stuff, right? Well, that means God made the devil too. So, it doesn't add up. But I can tell you one thing for sure. There was no judgment. There was no atonement. There was nothing that I had ever done that was completely forgiven. And forgiven in that context meant it was gone. It did not exist. The stupid little boneheaded things I've done in my life that have been, well, let's just say less than wonderful. I didn't have to atone for that. God wasn't holding me accountable for that. God was loving me right through it. And it was total and complete forgiveness. So I know other experiencers have described hellish experiences, and I don't know what that's about. I don't know what that's about, but I can tell you that in my experience there was nothing of the sort, nothing resembling hell. Although the first part of my experience where I was in the void and I was getting confused and scared and ramping up and getting very frightened, if I had been revived at that point, I would have called that a hellish experience. It was that scary. Maybe that's part of the explanation for it. I don't know. There's a lot I don't know. Again, I'm not a guru. Something weird happened to me. That's all. And I guess the last part was this being who absorbed me, and I had this download, said, now I want to introduce you to my creator, our creator. God, face to face. God didn't have a face, by the way. Remember, there's no stuff there. But he wasn't the guy with the big white beard and the lightning bolts, let me put it that way. And I'll tell you what God looked like, kind of. I've never been able to paint this. I've been trying, and I just can't get it. Yet, not yet anyway. So pretend you are the Hubble Space Telescope. And so this is surrounding you on all levels, okay? Everywhere. And when you look at a photograph of a galaxy is made up of little points of light, stars, right? Little points of light. Jillions of them, right? And in this case, it was infinite. It went on forever. Little points of light. And I was one of those points of light. And we were all connected. And each one of those points of light was every tsetse fly, every snail, every human being, every rock who had ever lived. And that's right, rocks are alive. I can't explain that. But rocks are also made out of love. Everything is made out of love. So it was like every being who had ever lived was there. And we were all connected. We were all one thing. Now, we were separate. I was still Raymond, me. But I was also we collectively together were God. And I had this feeling of, I have all the potential and power of God. I wasn't God, but somehow through the connection with all the other points of light, I was God. So I wasn't God, but I was God. And it was like this one big thought, one big floating sphere of awareness. And we were singing, and I'll never forget this. This was so beautiful. It was worship. That's the best word I can describe it. And it was about love. And it makes music as we understand it, it seemed like a cheap imitation. I could taste it and touch it and swallow it and digest it. And it took on whole other dimensions. And we were singing, I love you. We love you. We were worshiping one another with pure infinite love. And it was the most beautiful thing. And I know a lot of people have a fear of death. I have zero fear of death. Matter of fact, I want to go back. I can't wait. I'm in no hurry. I'm here to dance. I'm here to play this out as long as I can. But one thing I can tell you is that suicide won't work. If you're thinking about that, you can just scratch that one off the list, because it's not going to do what you think it's going to do. And I'm not exactly sure what that means. Again, I'm no guru, but I know that was one of the things that I was shown, is that no, you're not going. There's no short way around. You're not going to die until you fulfill your purpose. So we told me that when I say we told me, that it's not my time and I had to go back. And I threw a spiritual temper tantrum. And I said, I'm not going back. I didn't even know what back was, right? I didn't know I died. And I said, no, I'm not going back. Got this all wrong. And then once again, I was told, it's not your time. You have to go back. But you can come back anytime you want, once you fulfilled your purpose. And then I was sent back to my body.
Raymond, I'd like to thank you so much for relating your experience. And I have some questions for you.
Yeah.
Can we do a part 2 to this? I can ask you some questions about your experience?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of after effect things that should probably be spoken about. But yeah, go ahead, yeah. Ask away.
Okay. Then stay tuned for part 2.
Yes.
Thank you.
Welcome.